My hair is a disaster, so I am wearing my Hufflepuff hat because truly it is the gayest of the houses. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tavern's Books Beyond in the second half of my Rainbow Flag book tag. If you haven't watched the first part of it, then you might as well go watch that because otherwise this isn't going to make a lot of sense. When we finished last time we had just done yellow, which means that now we're moving on to green, and the question for green is a queer character that you can relate to. Now I think the character I can relate to the best out of all my queer books is Simon from Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda. Now there are some superficial things that connect me and Simon, like we're both pretty dorky and we can both get a bit anxious about how others see us, but I think the main thing is that this talks about stuff that occurs after and beyond the coming out narrative. Like, I've read a lot of really good queer books, but a lot of them are just about the coming out, and like that's the climax of the story, and they don't talk really about anything that happens after that. Simon vs. Homo Sapiens Agenda, it does talk about that, and Simon himself highlights some of the stuff that happens, like the fact that, well, you're never actually done coming out. Whenever you meet someone new, you have to come out to them and explain to them, and there's always that little bit of anxiety about how they're going to react about it. He also highlights the fact that queer kids in high school, we really don't know how to do relationships, because either your options are going to be severely limited or you're not going to have any at all, and basically we never get the chance to practice flirting with people, and we never get the chance to be in relationships quite often, and so we never have any of that experience that a lot of straight people have later in life, and so we're just kind of floating in limbo unless we get really, really lucky in high school. Now, the fifth question is blue, and that's a queer book that deals with some serious issues. Now, there are quite a few queer books, and some of which I've read myself, where the serious issue itself is the queerness of the characters and how other people react and the abuse and discrimination they face of it. But I've never read a book that deals with so heavily as If You Could Be Mine by Sarah for Reason. Now, this is a book that takes place in Iran, and in Iran, homosexuality is illegal. However, being a trans person and transitioning is not, because of some religious technicality that means the government is a-okay with it and in fact will fund people getting surgeries. That causes a serious issue where a lot of gay people, one of them will undergo a transition from male to female or female to male, whether they're trans or not, in order to be with the people they love. But obviously that kind of screws everything up because, like, if you're trans, you're not going to have any issues. But if you're gay and then you're transitioning, but you're cis, then you're going to be facing the same dysphoria that trans people have before they transition. Not to mention the fact that even if the government is supporting it, there's still people who don't like it, and people are still going to be discriminated against if they've undergone the surgery. Anyway, all of that is the background premise of the plot of this book, which mainly focuses on these two young girls who have been in relationships since they were kids, and then one of them gets engaged to a man, and so the other girl, she's terrified that she's going to lose her girlfriend, and so she starts to seriously consider undergoing the surgery to become a man, and then she would be able to legally be with her girlfriend. But, like, is that worth the cost? And that's one of the major issues that's brought up and debated throughout this book. So yeah, it's a really serious topic that we don't get a lot of exposure to because it's just not something that we'd have to deal with in North America. There's also Run by Cody Keplinger. With this one, the serious issues don't come from the queerness, because one of the main characters, Bo, she is bisexual, but the main issue isn't necessarily that, but the fact that she is stuck in an impoverished house with a severely abusive family. And then the other factor is that her best friend, Agnes, who is mostly blind, and she isn't heavily discriminated against, but she does have to deal with people doubting her and thinking that she's going to need to be helped and coddled for the rest of her life. So while the overall tone is pretty light, it does bring up these serious things that people have to deal with as well, and it's nice that it has queerness in it, but the scope of it is beyond just the queerness. Then rounding off this one, we've got We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson, which is serious drama angst central when it comes to these kinds of books. It deals with things like a grandparent having Alzheimer's and dementia, or how to deal with someone close to you killing themselves, or like a character being stuck in a pretty abusive relationship when you get right down to it. And yes, also there are alien abductions and the world is ending, but that's kind of small potatoes compared to the major issues that the main character Henry is going through. And you'd think that a book so jam-packed with angst is gonna kind of falter when it tries to deal with everything, but it actually managed to handle all of it pretty well, and I quite enjoyed the way it was able to get through everything and give everything pretty decent closure by the end. And the final question is purple, or indigo if you're nasty. And that one is to find a book where the queer characters in it are not the main characters. I've probably got quite a few books on my shelf that have queer side characters, and like, I'm proud to say that I'm pretty sure none of them were just shoved in there for tokenism, but the fact of the matter is that their queerness is such a non-issue. Like, on the one hand, yeah, it's a non-issue, but on the other hand, it's dealt with so little in the narratives of those books that, like, why should I bring them up at all? Like, if you're looking for cool representation, you don't want to be having to hunt for it on the offhand mention on page 386 of 609. So instead I tried to find a book where the queer side characters still managed to have a significant impact on it, and what I found actually turned out to be Welcome to Night Vale, the novel by Joseph Fink and Jeffrey Craner. Now, if you haven't heard of it yet, Welcome to Night Vale started off as a podcast, and it's kind of a surreal comedy horror. One of the main things that a lot of people, they lauded it for and they give it a lot of credit for is that the main characters in it, Cecil and Carlos, they're actually a gay couple. And over the 5-year history of the podcast, their relationship has had its ups and downs, and they've gone on dates, and eventually they managed to move in together and get married. Now, where those elements factor into this book and the question at hand is the fact that this book does not have the same main characters as the podcast. Cecil and Carlos do appear, and they do drop major exposition in their appearances throughout here, but they're not the focus of the book. But the fact of the matter is that nobody bats an eye at this, and so it's really nice element of the podcast, the fact that the queerness or potential queerness of any resident of the town is not anything to make a big deal out of. So now would normally be the part where I tag people, but I'm not really sure how to proceed with that, just because, well, it seems like a lot of people I follow, if they haven't done this tag, then they've done a different Pride tag, which is, awesome, but just kind of makes it confusing as to whether, do you want to do this again? You'd probably be just repeating a lot of the stuff you had in a previous video. I might end up tagging some people on, Twitter or Instagram, possibly, or I might not tag anyone. I am going to open this up to basically anyone who wants to do it, but maybe if I'm going over it while I'm editing, I'll think of some people and I was like, hey, you specifically, I want you to do this. I was just recently tagged in a video by Chris Vigilante, who did the This Tag is Full of Pride tag. I think that's what it's called. And that's basically just doing a bookshelf tour of all the queer books you have. And I've kind of already done half of them, but I know there are some that I left out, so I'll probably do, after this video, I'll probably do a third video doing that, maybe just doing a quick run over of these past books that I did, and then bring up the other stuff that I have that I didn't get a chance to talk about here. But then, I don't know if I'd be tagging people for that tag either, because, once again, it'd just be rehashing. I'd like to think that there's no limit on how gay you can get, but I think once you've exhausted every available topic, I think that's the limit. But, yet, it looks like that's all the gay I have for today. And so, in that case, I'll see you all later.